In the annals of World War II, amidst the global struggle for power, lay hidden stories of profound suffering and inhumanity. As the world grappled with the monumental forces of Allies and Axis, far in the east, the Empire of Japan committed acts that cast a long shadow over its history. Today, it is crucial to revisit these acts, not for the sake of retribution, but to understand the depths of human cruelty and the resilience of the human spirit. During this dark chapter, Japan's military engaged in systematic atrocities across Asia and the Pacific. These included massacres, forced labor, and biological warfare, actions that devastated millions of lives. Discussing these sensitive topics is not just about uncovering grim tales of the past. It's about fostering historical awareness and ensuring justice for the victims whose voices were silenced. As we peel back the layers of history, we confront uncomfortable truths that challenge our perceptions of morality and justice. Today, we delve into these dark chapters, unearthing the truths that time has buried. April 1942, the Philippines. A brutal journey begins. After the fall of Bataan, Japanese forces captured over 70,000 American and Filipino troops. Exhausted and defeated, these prisoners were forced into a merciless 60-mile march to prison camps. Along the way, they faced unimaginable brutality. Beatings, shootings, and bayonet attacks were rampant, and many succumbed to starvation and dehydration. This cruel ordeal came to be known as the Bataan Death March, a stark example of wartime cruelty. The march not only tested human endurance, but also marked the beginning of severe wartime atrocities. 1945, Manila becomes a battleground of despair. As the Battle of Manila raged, Japanese forces unleashed a torrent of violence upon the city. Civilians, caught in the crossfire, faced not just the chaos of combat, but a deliberate campaign of terror. Homes were razed and cultural landmarks destroyed as troops committed acts of mass killing and rape, leaving deep scars on the community. The once vibrant city lay in ruins, a silent witness to the cruelty inflicted upon its people. In the shadows of war, a secret facility conducted experiments that defied ethical bounds. Unit 731, hidden in the expanse of occupied Manchuria, was not just a military base, but a ground zero for some of the most appalling war crimes of World War II. Led by Lieutenant General Shiro Ishii, this covert unit specialized in biological and chemical warfare research, operating under the guise of water purification. The scientists and doctors at Unit 731 embarked on a series of human experiments that are difficult to comprehend today. Prisoners of war and civilians, including men, women, and children, were subjected to vivisections without anesthesia, exposed to lethal diseases like plague and cholera, and forced into freezing experiments that often proved fatal. The purpose? To develop weapons of mass destruction capable of shifting the scales of war entirely. Despite the magnitude of their crimes, the end of the war did not bring justice. Many involved in Unit 731 were granted immunity by the victorious Allies in exchange for the data from their experiments. This lack of accountability leaves a dark shadow over the ethical responsibilities of war and science. Unit 731 remains a chilling reminder of the horrors of unbridled military science. 1942, Singapore faces a merciless purge. As the island fell under Japanese control, a sinister operation unfolded, known as the Sook Ching Massacre. Japanese forces systematically targeted the Chinese community, accusing them of anti-Japanese sentiments. Men and women were rounded up in large numbers, subjected to hasty, often arbitrary screenings, and many were executed. The streets of Singapore bore witness to untold horrors as thousands were killed in this brutal campaign of suppression. An attempt to cleanse left deep scars on the collective memory of a nation. Across Asia, millions were enslaved under the guise of war necessity. During World War II, the Japanese military orchestrated a vast network of forced labor camps, extracting an immense toll on human life and dignity. Men and women, civilians and prisoners of war alike were coerced into these camps, where they faced brutal conditions. In these dark corners of war, the laborers worked under the relentless pressure of their captors. They toiled in mines, factories, and on construction projects, crucial to Japan's war effort, yet they were provided minimal sustenance and medical care. The mortality rate was alarmingly high due to malnutrition, disease, and the physical abuse meted out by overseers. personal accounts from survivors paint a harrowing picture. One prisoner of war recounted days of endless labor, interspersed with beatings if the grueling work quotas were not met. Another spoke of the silence in the camps, not from lack of words, but from the sheer exhaustion and despair that hung heavy in the air. The echoes of their hardship resonate as a grim reminder of war's reach beyond the battlefield. 1937, Nanjing. A city succumbs to unspeakable violence. In the winter of that year, following the capture of Nanjing by the Imperial Japanese Army, the city became the scene of one of the most brutal massacres in modern history. Over 6 weeks, the soldiers unleashed a campaign of terror. Mass executions, rampant sexual assault, and indiscriminate looting devastated the former capital of China. Civilians and disarmed combatants alike were rounded up in large groups. Many were taken to the outskirts of the city, where they were mercilessly shot and buried in mass graves. Others faced bayonets and swords in what can only be described as acts of sheer brutality. Women and girls were not spared in this onslaught. The scale of sexual violence was staggering, leaving deep psychological scars on the survivors. Alongside this, the city was pillaged, homes were ransacked, and the very fabric of society was torn apart. Nanjing's ordeal exposed the darkest instincts of man, unleashed during the chaos of war. A system of organized abuse shadows the Japanese military's footprint. During World War II, the Japanese military established the comfort women system, a brutal and systematic approach to sexual slavery. Women, primarily from Korea, China, and other occupied territories, were coerced or deceived into serving in military brothels. These women, many of whom were just teenagers, were subjected to unspeakable horrors, forced to endure multiple assaults daily. The plight of these women remained largely hidden for decades after the war, with survivors often suffering in silence due to social stigma and psychological trauma. It was not until survivors courageously began speaking out that the world became aware of their suffering. Their testimonies revealed not only the physical abuses they endured, but also the deep, lasting scars left on their lives and communities. Today, the survivors, often referred to as comfort women, continue to seek justice and reparations. Their fight is not just for compensation, but also for historical recognition of their ordeal. Legal battles and public campaigns across the globe echo their demands, pressing for acknowledgement and reparation from the Japanese government. Their silenced voices gradually find echoes in the halls of justice, demanding recognition and reparation. The construction of the Burma Railway, a monumental project built on the back of human misery. During World War II, Japan orchestrated the building of this 338-mile railway, employing forced labor under the most brutal conditions imaginable. Over 100,000 Allied prisoners of war and Asian laborers were conscripted into its construction. They toiled in treacherous jungle terrain, facing disease, malnutrition, and ruthless overseers. The staggering loss of life led to its harrowing nickname. Known as the Death Railway, it stands as a grim monument to human suffering and endurance. Beyond conventional warfare, Japan ventured into the realm of the forbidden. During World War II, the Japanese military not only used chemical weapons against populations in China, but also engaged in horrific human experiments. Units like the infamous Unit 731 pushed the boundaries of human suffering through vivisections and exposure to lethal diseases, all under the guise of scientific research. The scars left by these atrocities are deep, affecting generations with their brutal legacy. These acts, veiled in secrecy, left a legacy that continues to haunt the survivors. As we recount these grim tales, we confront the specters of our past. In this exploration, we have traversed through some of the darkest episodes of World War II, focusing on the atrocities committed by Japan. From the harrowing Bataan death march to the devastating Rape of Manila, the horrors of Unit 731's experiments, the ethnic cleansing in the Sook Ching Massacre, and the brutal conditions of the Burma Railway and forced labor camps. Each story, profoundly disturbing, serves as a stark reminder of the depths of human cruelty and the profound suffering endured by countless individuals. The systematic abuse, the exploitation of prisoners of war, and the unspeakable violence against civilians reveal a chapter of history that must never be forgotten. It is crucial to acknowledge these truths, not only to honor the memory of the victims, but also to educate and inform future generations. Recognizing the past fully equips us to safeguard against the repetition of such inhumanity. It reinforces our commitment to uphold human rights and to foster a global community that vehemently rejects war crimes and values peace and human dignity. By facing these truths, we honor the victims and pledge an unwavering commitment to peace and humanity.